Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to catch up with me on Twitter, you can find me at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram at I Love That Movie Podcast, and we have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to join us on there, you can. That's at patreon.com/I Love That Movie. And if you do sign up, you get a weekly bonus episode of everything I'm watching. People always go, "What are you watching? Why don't you talk about new movies or new shows?" And books lately too. I talk about that on there. And we also have interviews. We've covered like The Mandalorian, we've covered WandaVision, so many Marvel shows mostly. So if you want to check all that out on there, do that. And I want to take a moment to thank my top patrons there: Chris Balga, Jeff Widman, Philip Barker, Michael Cross. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. I have a familiar voice on the podcast. I have Kara. Say hi, Kara.
Hey, it's me, Kara.
Yes, we've talked about many things. We've covered most of the Indiana Jones films, or all the ones that exist to Kara.
Yes, that is correct. We've talked about all of them.
And what else have we talked? We've talked about Die Hard. We've talked about The Long Kiss Goodnight. Just a lot of great films. So, Kara, if people haven't heard you on the show before, did you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. So here I am. We've been friends since basically forever. So
Yes.
a lot of our movie experiences were coinciding as we grew up. And let's see. So currently now, yes, I watch movies and read books and let's see, what else should I say about myself? That's most of it. I watch movies and I read books. I'm an anthropologist, and
Which is cool.
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's like really nerdy. But yeah, that's you know.
I won't argue that, but I mean, you're listening to a movie podcast, so
That's true.
I mean.
And I do love how like movies really reflect like a lot of our like societal like concerns and interests and thoughts. Like I recently talked to like my class at school about this. We were talking about like monsters and plagues and how movies really kind of reflect, if you look at like sort of the change in how certain kinds of monsters or horror tropes are portrayed over time. Like it's portraying like whatever the societal anxieties and concerns are. And like, it's really interesting to think about, you know, media and movies that way is, you know, really, you know, kind of being a mirror for what's going on, you know, in society at the time that they come out. So I love that about movies.
As an example, I think recently horror has really centered a lot on cults. And I don't think there's an accident with that. I mean,
yeah.
you know,
We've got a
we have
problem with that.
anxieties about people being brainwashed. Let's just leave it
Yeah.
there.
Exactly. It doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kara, I always have my guests pick the episode, even when I've known them as long as I've known you. So what movie did you choose to talk about
Okay,
today?
so we're going to talk about another one of my favorites, which, you know, for those of you that have watched the other episodes that I'm in, you know it's going to be a silly action film. It's Die Hard with a Vengeance.
1995.
Yes.
I admitted to you before we started recording that I've never seen this before, or I don't recall seeing it.
And I like, this blows my mind. I don't understand how this happened.
I feel like when I was younger, I wasn't as into Die Hard.
Yeah, no.
And so I think you watched all the sequels and I was like, oh yeah.
That's true.
Like I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize like how important this movie was to Die Hard fans and to I don't know, it's just way better than I expected it to be.
Yes! Okay, I'm glad you
I like the
thought
Die Hard
that.
movie a lot, but I still, sequels, and
Yeah.
especially when there's a bunch of them, you're like, "Eh,"
Yeah, it's like
but this one was really
yeah,
good.
you don't expect the sequels to be good, but this one I noticed, like, when I was, like, getting ready to do the episode, I was like, "Oh, this is on, like, some lists of, like, the best sequels to movies."
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
and I think it is, like, I would say, like, I'm not gonna say it's better than the original Die Hard, because that movie is as close to perfection as a Xenomorph is close to perfection, which I always thought that was a weird thing to say about that, but, it's a good movie, but this one's
Yeah.
pretty up there, I would say. It's almost as good as the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we continue, I'm gonna read the synopsis really quick. And I will say, if you haven't watched this movie, I would go ahead and do that. Pause, watch it, come back, because we will not have a spoiler-free discussion. So,
Correct.
definitely watch it first. But here we go. Detective John McClane is now divorced, alcoholic, and jobless after getting fired for his reckless behavior and bad attitude. He is called back into action, however, when a cryptic terrorist takes New York City hostage in a lethal game of Simon Says and refuses to speak with anyone but McClane. Teaming up with a street savvy electrician named Zeus Carver, McClane dashes through the city trying to stay one step ahead of a murderous plot.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, just kidding, we're not having those. It's Jeremy Irons. He's the villain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did you first see this movie?
Oh man, so I was actually just thinking about this earlier today, and I was trying to like go through my head in the timeline because I know I didn't see this in theaters because like we were a little too young when this came out in theaters to like be allowed to go see an R-rated movie in the theater. Um,
Sure.
but I and the way I figured this out for my Die Hard timeline is I know that the first time I saw the original Die Hard was actually the night that Princess Diana was killed in a car crash because it's like a flashbulb memory for me. We talked about this on the Die Hard
Mm,
episode, and that was in
yeah.
1997. So that was when I saw the original Die Hard, and so it would have been basically right after that that I saw this because I loved that movie, and then I found out there were sequels to it, and I watched them all. So this would have been in like 97 or 98 when I saw this film.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. My first time was today.
Oh my goodness.
So let's so I think it's going to be interesting though because we'll have two different perspectives, both positive, but different times in our life from seeing it. So I think that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I
Um
totally agree. Because, like, seeing this when you're like 13 or however old is, probably a different experience from seeing it for the first time as, an adult. Because everything seems more
sure.
plausible when you're a tween or is that what a 13-year-old is? Is that a tween?
I think so, like
Yeah,
12 to 13 I would say is a
yeah,
tween, I think.
yeah,
I
something like
really
that.
don't
I
know.
don't know either, but yeah. Anyway, and I had like a giant crush on like every person in this film because again, hormones.
Yeah, I understand that as well.
Yeah.
um I actually was thinking watching this, I tweeted it. I said, "I think Samuel L. Jackson looks handsome in this movie."
Oh my goodness, I do too. And he
Like, I don't know why that's surprising to me. I think because I'm not saying he didn't look handsome in Pulp Fiction, but he came across in that movie. I mean, that's like an iconic movie he was in, but I feel like that was, that's him being Samuel L. Jackson, like almost as a caricature, like in the way that Nick Cage is also like that.
yes.
It's like, here's the phrases and the beats that I do for most of my career kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I view that person under that lens of like, this is like a character.
Yeah.
But in this movie, he just looked more like a regular dude. And I
Yeah.
think I was just surprised, like, oh, he looks good here. I mean, Bruce Willis also and Jeremy Irons as well. But I feel like a lot of Samuel L. Jackson's movies I've watched, and I've seen quite a few, but I think a lot of them he's just very like they give him like a almost like a costume. You know what I mean?
Yes.
To where you kind of forget like there's a person under all
Yeah,
that.
because he was in like every movie in the 1990s and like early 2000s. It was like he was the
Yes.
person that you drop in your movie because he, has that, great style of like talking and giving these like one liners and zingers. And I mean, he's just a great character actor, but I saw, it was either an interview or like some YouTube video, I don't remember, I was watching it a little while back, and apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but what I heard was that he had said that this role actually was the one that to him felt the most like him as a real person rather than a character.
Okay, well
Yeah.
then, yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like I remember when I was younger, my mom was like, "I have something weird to admit. I think Jim Carrey is handsome," and I was like, "I do too." But it's like he's such a character in every movie that you forget he's like a regular guy, you know?
Right.
Like, well, he's not. He's very strange, but
I mean,
but I mean,
you
like
know.
he looked
Yeah,
regular.
he is a
So it's
human
like,
person as far as we know.
yeah, he's not just the mask.
Yeah.
So like I think like with Samuel L. Jackson, same thing. So like hearing that he also felt more
Mhm.
comfortable in this role is like this is me as like a regular person. Okay, that makes me feel better about what I said.
Yeah.
It's actually one of my facts that I had was that Samuel L. Jackson was thrilled to be in this movie and that he said he'd seen Die Hard like 30 times.
I love that.
And that he couldn't wait to be in this. And I really do feel like he seems like he's having a lot of fun in this movie.
Yes, that's like what I love about this movie is I feel like him and Bruce Willis are just like having a really great time making this movie, and all of the scenes with them in it together are just so much fun to watch. Like it's fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I miss, this is sort of, I guess, I don't know why I'm staying on this topic, but I also miss this era of when guys could just look like Bruce Willis is not like, I don't know, he doesn't look like The Rock. You know what I
Right,
mean?
he's not like
Or
super
like John
jacked.
Cena.
Like he's got like,
yeah,
he's got like part of
he's like,
his, his thing is that he's got like the thinning hairline and he's just like the regular Joe guy.
mhm. Like he's a cop in New York City. He's not going to be, a model. Like,
Right.
and I like that. I don't know, I wish that it was the expectation in every single movie wasn't that dudes had to be super jacked. I don't really understand why we went to that, and I kind of miss this
I
era
know.
of not having
And
that.
I mean, I know you and I diverge in our tastes, and like, don't get me wrong, like, I enjoy seeing The Rock or, Thor and like all
Sure.
that. Like, fantastic, wonderful. Continue going to the gym. I am all about it. But having said that, yeah, it's nice to see films where people are just like regular people. Like, this is what people
Yeah,
look
I
like.
mean, if the role demands it, it makes sense, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, they're like an accountant or something, and you're like, I don't understand why they're so buff.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
what's going
why do
on?
you have to be that jacked to be an accountant? I don't think that's part of it.
Unless it's a spicy accountant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But in air quotes. So this movie was originally titled Simon Says, where Zeus was scripted as a woman.
I saw
and
that.
and was considered by Joel Silver as a third sequel to Lethal Weapon.
Which
I feel like this movie feels like a Lethal Weapon movie.
It does. When I found that out, that made so much sense to me. I was like, yes, this is a Lethal Weapon movie.
Because they just banter constantly, right?
They
like
do.
That's like their thing.
That's their thing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I feel like they did it better in this film. Like, I like the Lethal Weapon series. We should do... Ooh, okay. Here's an idea. We should do some episodes about the Lethal Weapon movies.
We should.
Because
I would like to do that.
Except it does... Well, okay, like, I'm not a big fan of Mel Gibson these days, but...
I know people are like, I forgive him. He moved on. I'm like,
No, I don't think he did.
I'm like, I guess if I wasn't a woman, maybe. But I'm like, also the Jewish thing.
Yeah,
I don't know how you pretend like he didn't say all that a bunch of times.
I can't
I'm sorry.
unhear that, like, hot tub video and, like, everything else. I'm not over it.
Yeah, I really feel like, I don't know, I would say if you're a woman and you, or a man,
Yeah,
I don't
if you're a
understand how
person-
you could not hear someone talk to someone that way.
Yes!
Be able to forget about it.
Yeah! Like, I'm not saying,
I just
he
can't
has to
do
be,
it.
quote unquote canceled or whatever, but, like, I am gonna tell you that hearing someone act like that makes an impression that I remember the next time I see them.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he was drunk, and I'm like,
I don't
guess, but I
This is like that
don't
time
like
I
it.
dated that guy that claimed, like, sleep deprivation made him racist, and I was like, no, I think you're just racist.
You're like, it It's been decided.
Yeah.
We've seen the other side and we're ready to leave
Yeah,
now.
this
Thank
is
you
just
for
this is you.
sleep
Yeah,
deprivation.
that's
Yeah, no, I
not
don't think I would accept that either.
no, that's not
Um,
it. That's not what happens. Like, this is just how you
um,
are. So, yeah, there's
yes,
that
yeah, I think
problem.
that's how he is. But we'll address that and we may get some heat for it, but it will come up
Yeah.
when we talk about that movie. It has to.
Yeah.
But
Moving
so
on.
with this, like 20th Century Fox didn't agree to sell the script for whatever reason to Joel Silver, and I think good move just because I don't know, this was just like a really good sequel, and
Yeah.
it's like I mean, could you pick two people to play off each other better? Like the way that Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson riff back and forth is just really entertaining. So
It's
I don't know, good
fantastic.
call there.
Yeah, no, it worked great.
Yeah,
I think it came out so much better this way than it would have as a Lethal Weapon movie. Like, I think this was dynamite. This was the
yeah.
correct direction to go with this, even though it wasn't necessarily what they first intended. And I also heard that apparently they were thinking about casting Lawrence Fishburne instead of Samuel L. Jackson, which I no shade to Lawrence Fishburne. I think he's great, but I think that would have been a very different movie as well. And
Yes.
I don't know if I
That
would have
would be
liked it.
closer to Danny Glover, I think.
Yeah, which
You know what I mean? Where, like,
mhm,
Danny Glover can be really funny and, like, no, of course, they, like, do back and forth and they riff on each other, but it's, like, in a different way.
mhm. Yeah, it is a
Whereas,
different
like,
way.
Samuel L. Jackson's, like, I don't know, just, like, sass level is, like, so high.
It is an outstanding level of high, and I love
Yeah.
also the way that, like, in the scenes that they're in together, he has a really good way of, like, how do I put this? It's like he's not being really over the top, but he has a way of being just, like, so, like, witty and also intelligent and sensible that, like, he makes, like, Bruce Willis's character sometimes seem, like, kind of
Very dumb.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, like, he's just like, "Are you kidding me right now?" And, like but the way he, like, delivers it and, like, shuts him down, it's like Bruce Willis is stunned
yeah, and he's like,
for a couple
"Oh."
seconds.
And that's also what I really like about Bruce Willis's character in the movie, which is not the same way as it is in the Die Hard books. Like, I don't like his character in the books. But in the movie, I think he actually does a great job of being someone who's, like, genuinely a person with, like, a really good heart. Even though,
Yeah.
he makes mistakes and, he has trouble with his relationship with his wife and Holly and everything like that. But, like, he's, like, genuinely a person with a good heart, but also there's all these occasions in this movie where, like, Samuel L. Jackson is, like, pointing out things that are like, hey, here's some problems with, like, race relations and policing in the United States. And he makes these points, like, really quickly and, like, in kind of a witty way, and where you realize, oh, okay, yeah, that's a really good point. And, like, Bruce Willis's character is also not like a jerk about it, but it just kind of reveals that he had never thought about that before and was just kind of
Yeah.
oblivious and ignorant, but he's also able to be at least
He
humble
pivots,
enough
like
to go, "Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay. Huh. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Okay. All right." And
Well, and I wanna dive into that
yeah.
also.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll just say my last thing real quick, and then I'll come back. The last, like, quick fact I had was that this was, like, the highest grossing movie in 1995.
Yes, which, like, totally deserved.
That
This is a good movie.
surprised me. Yeah, I think it's really good, but I'm just like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that." To what you said, though, about there is a through line in this film that they talk about racism a lot
Mhm.
in a way that they don't in the first one, and then a
Mhm.
way that they don't in a lot of cop movies, even when they have a black man and a white man
Mhm.
leading.
Yeah.
But they do in this one, and I think that that is because this movie came out in '95, and that's about 4 years after Rodney King.
That makes sense.
Do you feel like that's part of? Because I feel like in that time, right after that, they're gonna make another cop movie.
Mhm.
It's like, how do we do that after that happening? Just so fresh in our minds. Like, how do we and so I feel like having Samuel L. Jackson and then weaving into the plot these things that just keep coming up over and over, it's because they're trying to address some of that.
Yeah, and they
Like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, they didn't shy away from it, and they could have. Like, if it had been another
And they
Lethal Weapon
normally
movie,
do.
yeah, they would have.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, they're
yeah.
just cops together, they're buddies, and like, it's not about race. Like, okay, that's great. I'm glad they're friends and they get along and everything. But in this movie, it was different because, like, Samuel L. Jackson's character was not a cop. He was like some guy from Harlem that owned a store, that was a business owner. And the whole reason he gets dragged into this movie is because, that initial scene where, Simon tells, John McClane, like, oh, okay, you have to go, like, stand on the street corner in Harlem wearing this sign that says, and by the way, I didn't actually know what the sign said the first, like, several times that I saw this movie because I saw it on TV and they blurred what it says on the sign. And me being like, 12 or 13, I wasn't like aware of anything that was going on in the world. Also, we were very sheltered as children. But
I was gonna say, like, I mean, and we lived in the South, and I
yeah,
feel like I don't think I would have really picked up on anything in this movie
I didn't.
that, um and now it's just under the lens, especially with everything that's happened in the past few years. It's shocking to me to see a movie in the mid '90s address any of this,
Yeah.
like, sadly. And I do think that is because of what had happened not
Mhm.
that long before this movie, which is depressing because we're still kind of having these same conversations. But it's also it's interesting because, like, they do with this character, especially Bruce Willis's characters, they basically have him be the kind of guy that, like, is kind of oblivious
Mhm.
and, like, he keeps in several times in the movie, he's like, "Why do you have to make it about race?" Like, he's like that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And yet he's kind of slowly getting redirected very gently. Like, it's clear that the movie is not saying, like, "Yeah, why do you have to make everything about," it's like it's against him. It's like, here's our hero that we really like, and he's saying things that are not correct. Let's gently guide him to the right answer.
Yeah.
And, like, that's kind of a big thing to do, especially in the mid
Uh,
90s. A lot has changed since
yes, I'm
then.
glad a lot has changed since then, and I want to take it as like a indication of what people's thought process was in 1995, and also we can still critique that and say, that's very problematic.
Yeah.
um,
Like, I'm sure there were people on set and involved that were like, "I don't really get this part," but
yeah, like this, like it seems like it's supposed to be kind of like a slightly like funny scene, but
Yes, and I was like, "It's not, though."
yeah, this is
Like,
upsetting.
what?
And the fact that like he's a cop and is doing this, and I understand it's not like supposed to be the way he really feels, and he's saying, "Hey, I'm being forced to do this," but it's still upsetting that that's happening in that context.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's still like, "Okay, we're gonna talk about crime and, shooting people, and yet undermine it with this joke. That's not a good idea."
yeah,
But the rest of the movie, thankfully, doesn't do
yeah,
that.
and I feel
So,
like
they move away from
they
that
move
pretty
away from that
quickly.
quickly, and it was a scene that kind of introduces the dynamic between the two characters, and like, oh, also this is something interesting that I learned too recently, that okay, apparently there's a novelization of the film. Unlike the
Oh.
original Die Hard, which was based on a book, this one was not based on a book. It was the screenplay we already talked about, that they were going to make a Lethal Weapon. But after that, they made a novel version of it, I guess. But anyway,
Mhm.
in the novel version, which I have not read, so I can't speak authoritatively on this, but apparently they go into a little more detail about the character's background and motivation and all that. And there is a deleted scene that I saw in like the original like 1995 trailer to the film, where they're like John McClane and Zeus are having a conversation where he's explaining like why he hates cops and white people in general, and he's talking about how his brother, Samuel L. Jackson's character Zeus, is talking about how his brother was killed in, get this, speaking of timely, a drug raid where he was inappropriately shot by obviously a white cop.
Mm.
And Bruce Willis is like, oh, well, what was he doing in the crack house then, if he wasn't a piece of shit? And then,
Well,
like, the explanation is,
yeah.
like, Samuel L. Jackson's character is like, well, actually, he wasn't involved in drugs. He was, coming there to try and get me to come home, and then he was shot when a raid happened, and like actually he wasn't doing anything wrong.
And this was probably a bridge too far in 1995 for them
Yeah,
to.
so it's not included
like-
in the final cut of the film, but they did film that scene, but they didn't include it in the movie, and it's like talked about in the novel version that I think exactly like 2.5 people have ever read. But
Right. But at least you can tell the intent was to try to like lean into those themes, and I'm glad that they still brought them up. It's just there's like one or two scenes. The other weird scene to me is the one with Samuel Jackson and the two kids.
Oh, his nephews.
And they bring him that his nephews, he bring him that stolen thing, and he's like has this little speech with them about how we do the right thing and we don't steal and we don't do. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but that was the only part that I was like, that one kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit.
That didn't really hit for me either. But like apparently,
I'm like, I don't think you have to like address that everyone in Harlem isn't a criminal. That seems weird to even have to say that. But
anyway. Like, thanks a lot, Hollywood, that we have to discuss that. And it's shocking that there are people that aren't criminals. Like, yeah.
I didn't
like that either. Like, I like that it sets him up as like, hey, this is a family guy who's a moral and ethical person.
Yeah, that's true.
But why did we have to set that up for him when it's perfectly okay that like John McClane is a, bastard, alcoholic on suspension from his job, and we can still like him even though he's a, in some ways a piece of shit.
And like we don't ever automatically on sight wonder if someone's a criminal, like, or we shouldn't in theory. So like, why do we have to address that Zeus isn't a criminal? I thought that was a little weird, but again, I think it speaks to like the time that it was in, or like you said, if you're in a certain neighborhood, then they have to be like, oh, by the way, this person isn't a criminal, which I'm like, I didn't think that. So you didn't have to give me that scene. Thank you, though. But especially in Hollywood, I feel like you do, because in a lot of movies, they do kind of go like, well, everyone here is a criminal. So anyway, and it's like, so I guess maybe they're kind of having to undo some of that. I don't know. But anyway, it was kind of, it's a scene that stood out to me now that I don't think you would have in a newer movie.
I think it is problematic. It's great that they're portraying him as a good person, but why did we have to have that?
Yeah. But let's get to the scenes that we do like. Sorry.
No, totally okay.
I always But so Kara, let's discuss. I mean, we could talk about each actor in the movie, but I feel like that's going to come up as we go along. So why don't we talk about some of your favorite scenes?
Oh man, yeah. Okay, let's see. Favorite scenes. I mean, like I already said, like all of the ones where like Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson are like interacting and their banter is great. Like I love the one where it's like towards the beginning and they've finally, so it's after the scene we just talked about, and they've all arrived at the police station, and Simon the villain calls in and is like gonna make his next bomb threat, and like they're all on the phone with him because this is 1995, and so everyone's like all like picking up the landline to get onto the phone call together. And
yes,
it's like this great like series of insults, and it's like where you realize that Zeus is like actually like more witty than most of the other characters in the film, and he's like throwing out these lines like, oh well, why don't you lay that shove that well laid plan up your well laid ass, and everyone's like, oh, this is great. I love that scene where you're like kind of getting to know everybody on this like party line phone line situation. And like you've got like the psychiatrist in there like trying to psychoanalyze the villain, but then we later realize that it was actually his plan to make them think he was up to something different than what he was, and like the psychiatrist was actually completely worthless in this scene.
It's funny to me that Bruce Willis wouldn't hear Jeremy Irons' accent and immediately wonder if there's a Hans Gruber connection.
Like,
but maybe
how many German terrorists does he know other than that one? Like, it's weird that it took that long. Yeah.
But yeah, I like those scenes, and you're right, they're funny, with everybody kind of going back and forth with what they're
Yeah.
saying, especially Samuel L. Jackson, because he always gets some of the
He
best
does,
lines.
and like I'm just like always imagining. I don't know if this is the case, but I assume he must be like just really good at ad libbing and like coming up with this stuff.
You know what happens when you make an assumption.
Make an
Just
ass out of
kidding.
you and umption. Call back to a previous
So good.
episode.
Yeah.
That's great, but I mean that's got to be him coming up with his lines. I mean, I'm assuming that.
Yeah, I feel like he
Yeah,
wrote
I think
that.
he
Yeah.
did. So I love that about him, and that's probably why he's in every movie in the 1990s and 2000s. But
Yeah.
it's a good one. But okay, let's see what else. Like good scenes from this movie.
Well, this movie went from, in the first Die Hard film, it all takes place in one tower. So now we're outside of the tower. We're all over New
Yeah.
York. And I was wondering how they're going to do that, And I guess the answer is lots of explosions.
Yes, it turns out lots of explosions and car chases is how we go across
Yes.
New York, which I love that. And I love that they have all the scenes where they like steal a taxi. They're like driving all over the place, going through Central Park.
Oh, I meant to ask you this. I'm glad that you brought up that you were a cop. I was like, so Kara, I was thinking, like, how many times were you having to pull your badge, point a gun at someone, and say, "I need this vehicle"? Whenever I see that in a movie, I'm like, that's
yeah,
not a
exactly
thing, right?
zero amount of times has that been a thing.
I'm like, I don't think a cop can just pull you over and go, "I have to use this car." But in Hollywood, it's like every single movie. That's just like a thing we all pretend like cops can do. Like, I don't.
That is not a thing. Under no circumstances is that a thing. You may not seize someone's vehicle because you want to drive fast. That's not okay.
I'm like, but I guess you're not always losing your cop car.
Even when you do, you
do.
may not seize someone else's vehicle to chase after it. That is not a thing.
It just makes me laugh. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, Kara, were you having to constantly pull people over and take their taxi and stuff?
Never under any circumstances. No. No.
Yeah.
That is robbery. It is auto theft. You may not do that.
Yeah, it's like, and also there's just not a lot of situations where you're not able to drive your own car. Only in movies are you not able to drive your cop car.
It's just a trope to like make the car chase happen in the way you want it to. Real car chases are not like, flying through the park and like cutting in between two vehicles where you're like scraping off the sides of the doors and hitting the, side view mirror. Like that's not okay. That's not a safe way to drive.
I did find it really funny though when he was like, "I know a way through the park," and then it was through the park. And also like arguing about which way to take and then ending up in bumper to bumper traffic. I was like, see, this is realistic if you're in New York.
Yes, this is how traffic works.
You wouldn't be getting anywhere.
You're like, well, we'll be there in 45 minutes. Hold on. Yeah.
And then where they were like, when Samuel L. Jackson was like, "We should get a fire truck," I'm like, oh, I like that idea. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. He like has the best ideas throughout much of this movie.
I also thought it was funny when he was like, called him Jesus.
Yeah.
Which was my grandfather's name. But anyway, he's like, "No, it's Zeus."
That was great. Jesus. Yeah, I loved that. And I love that his name is Zeus. It's just it's great. It's a cool name.
And then the fact that he's like, it's like the god of Olympus or whatever.
Like shove a firebolt up your ass. Like, yes.
That was good.
It was good. And I love that, like, Bruce Willis is just like, "Oh, okay, I was wrong there."
He's like, "Your name is Zeus now.
Okay,
forget about it.
Moving on." I'm like, good job realizing you made a like vaguely racist statement and it was not correct, and now we're moving on. And you're like, okay, yeah, we're moving on.
My bad. I will not do that anymore.
Like, well done.
But yes, that was pretty funny.
But yeah, that was great. I love that. He's like, "Why are you calling me Jesus?" Which, like,
he's like, "Why are you calling me that?"
Good question.
I thought it was good.
Yeah, that was great. I love that. Like all of their scenes, he's like constantly calling him out, and he's like, "Oh, okay, Oops.
Well, and also like McClane is just so like sassy
Mm-hmm.
and rude. Like when he's like really going after Jeremy Irons over the phone, I'm like I'm kind of going cuz I'm like, well, he's talking to like a terrorist and he's just going like you're dumb and stuff and I'm
Yes.
like, "Oh
Yeah.
dear." And so he's always kind of thumbing his nose at authority and like being rude and just putting people down, and like Samuel L. Jackson really can like go one step further and just shut him down, and it's kind of funny to
Yes,
watch.
I love that he does that, and he's like, "Oh, oh, okay, yeah, you're right." And also, like, I love that you brought that up too. Like, this whole premise of this movie, I understand this is a '90s action movie and it's supposed to be silly and fun, but like, none of this is how you negotiate with a terrorist. Like, let's just
We do not negotiate with
we do
terrorists, but
not.
um
And like this business of like,
but
oh yeah, send him out into the street with this slur on a sign. Like, no, you don't agree to that.
and
That's not a thing that would
all
happen.
these like
Yeah, we're
riddles,
gonna do some
the
riddles
one
and
that
puzzles. Like, no, we're not.
the one, and I was like, well, I guess like, is this like the Riddler? Like, I mean, the Batman is like, or like Saw. I don't know, but it was just kind of funny to me, like that the terrorists had all these riddles, but which I feel like isn't a thing that ever happens. Except,
No.
I mean, I remember like there was that one instance where I don't know if you've watched that documentary on Netflix that was like mastermind, criminal mastermind, or whatever it was called, about those people that were like attaching bombs to people and like giving people complicated instructions and stuff. But like they later in that movie, I think it was called Criminal Mastermind or something like that. But later in the even in that documentary, they're like, these people weren't very smart. and I'm like and I'm like, I don't think smart people, even smart criminals, would do this. like
No, like smart criminals don't leave clues.
like
Like
to
that.
me, being a very intelligent person means you wouldn't need to have all these complicated riddles to like prove that you were smart to cops. Like that
No,
seems
you
like
would just
it
like
seems
do your
insecure.
crime.
like
Yes,
to
it
need that
does.
validation that it was really a hard riddle or whatever. But the funniest riddle to me was the water one. I
Yes,
was like
with the water
dying.
jugs. I love that. And they're like over there trying to like pour the like bucket into the other thing. I'm like,
This
what
is
are
like
you
such a waste of
doing?
time. And I thought
This
it was
is
funny
ridiculous.
when in some of the riddles they were like, "Oh, we would not have been able to do this in time." I'm like, that
Like,
feels more realistic to me. Like
right. And like I get that the plot of the movie was supposed to be that he's just like distracting them the whole time so they don't like catch on to his real plot, but like why are you distracting people with puzzles and riddles? Like what are you doing? Why don't you just distract them with a bomb threat somewhere else?
oh,
What
it
is
was called,
this?
I think it was called like Evil Genius? Yes. It's Evil
Oh
Genius: The
no.
Story of America's Most Diabolical Bank Heist. If you watch it, my opinion, it's, well, it'll make you nauseous because I mean these are real people that really suffered and it's
Yeah.
horrible. But you're also
Oh my
like,
god.
I really don't like the way everyone is in the interviews is talking about this group of people like, oh, they're so brilliant, and it's like they blew people up, like that's horrible. But then finally, like later in the documentary, they're like, these people weren't very smart.
Well,
And I'm like,
right.
that
Like
makes,
if you're
thank you. I'm like, I'm glad someone said that. like,
yeah, like you're not smart because you made up a riddle that doesn't make any sense. Like I'm
sorry.
sorry, that doesn't make you a genius. That makes you bad at communicating.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know, like the it is like a really fun movie. I'm not knocking the movie at all, but it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like Jeremy Irons, I'm like, you're giving me insecure vibes with your like
Mm,
complicated riddles, and then like, see, that was hard. And I'm like, okay, crazy, like like we don't, and
yeah.
then anyway, but
Yeah.
still it
And then
makes
it's
for a very
also
fun
like
film.
yes, it's a fun film, but also it's riddles that are like easy enough that they can solve them in 2 or 3 minutes.
Sorry.
So I mean,
Yeah.
that's not that hard,
The Riddler, he's
actually.
not, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're dealing with a cop and an electrician, and they're solving all of your riddles in the allotted time frame. Like,
Yeah, and they're
it's
able to
not
consistently every time, so the riddles aren't very hard. And I was
right.
thinking, like, what is it about the riddles? And maybe I missed this in the movie, but like, why did he want to punish McClane with riddles? Does he say?
So I think this might be like a holdover from the fact that this was a
I
screenplay that was like adapted
Yeah,
from a
it's
different
probably the one
screenplay.
piece they couldn't really make sense with that, but
Yeah.
okay, that I can
It's
accept.
like they
Hans Gruber was eccentric, so whatever. His brother is too.
Yeah. And it's like he was mad at him for killing his brother. Like, okay, fine, but like I don't really know how the riddles fit into that.
He was like, but this time I'll get him with riddles.
With riddles, because he's known for being a genius. Like, no, he's not. Like,
In his mind, I
what?
guess, the evil
Yes.
mastermind. But still, obviously, this movie is made funnier and more entertaining by
Yes.
all these challenges because it forces them to have to work together, but also still be
Yeah.
mad at each other, and that's very funny.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
am not upset about the Simon Says, because that made it very funny.
Yeah, like every time they're trying to solve one of these riddles and they're like getting mad at each other. Like that's the best part of the film. Like when they're trying to get on the phone and like they can't get the lady to get off the phone.
Oh,
and
Jeremy Irons is very fat phobic in my opinion, in that he's like, that
yes.
fat woman was on the phone. I'm like, how does he know
Yeah.
she's fat?
Yeah, like why couldn't
Did
you
he
just say
see
there was
her?
somebody on the phone? Like I think that's the point that they're trying to make is that like
Oh, that he can
he's
see.
watching
Oh,
them, he could
okay.
see them,
Oh,
but
okay.
also like why did he have to say she's fat? Why couldn't he just say there was like somebody on the phone? Like why is it
Yeah.
a fat woman?
And then Samuel L. Jackson like screamed at her, and Bruce Willis is like, I feel like we don't have to be that mean.
Yeah,
I
he's
thought
like that
funny.
was extra.
He's like, let's be nice to people. Like,
Yeah,
that was
that
kind
was
of funny.
great.
But yeah, and like also Jeremy Irons constantly plugs, he's like, just in case you forgot, Simon Says. It just felt like desperate
Yes.
branding on his part.
It did, because like apparently that was supposed to be the name of the movie
Yeah.
originally, and then like it changed to Die Hard, but like it stayed in there and it was like Simon Says. But it was almost I feel like this would have fit really well into the like what was that other movie that was in the 90s, or wait, maybe this was the 2000s, with Jake Gyllenhaal, where it was the Zodiac killer
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Like
He had a lot
it's
of,
like one of those.
the
Yeah.
Zodiac, I think it was called, but
Yeah,
at least they're
Zodiac,
not
yeah.
the BTK killer, or the Zodiac killer, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It feels like one of those to me, where like they were trying to originally probably make it more about the bad guy, but then when they
Mm.
reworked it, they were.
Yeah, and for the bad guy to have a calling card, I mean, that's why,
Mm,
some killers do have like a phrase or whatever that keeps popping
yeah,
up. But I just thought it was
yeah. It was
funny,
like
the idea
Simon Says.
of a killer being like, Simon Says, and everyone's just like silent, like, okay. No, that's my brand. No, guys,
Yeah, and
that's
they're
my
like,
brand. Simon Says, get it? Yeah, we get it. I don't know.
we get it, but like, isn't that like a children's game? Like, what are you like
Put that in the
5?
paper. Simon Says. Okay, we got it. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you so much.
thanks.
Simon
So,
Says
like, do you want
killer.
to come out now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's not great, but like I feel like if it had been anybody other than Jeremy Irons, I would have been able to take that character a lot less
I
seriously.
agree. He did a really good job.
Yeah, he did a good job of like trying to make it serious, even though it's real silly. Which is what I love about '90s action films is
Yeah, I
that
mean,
they
I'm
don't
not
take themselves too
I'm
seriously.
mentioning it like because it's fun and it's funny, but truthfully, I want these movies to be the way that they are. Like they're
Yes,
good the way that they are.
they're perfect the way they are. It's silly, it's ridiculous, it's fun. We're having a good time, and also we're in the background thinking about larger social issues,
Yeah.
which is a great way to present that to the public, in
Mhm.
my opinion. Like, we're having a good time, and here, I'm going to drop this right here for you to think about later. Like, huh, okay, yeah, maybe that's good.
Yeah, I
Maybe,
agree.
yeah. So it's not, it's probably not, I don't know, because I didn't see this in theaters at the time, but I don't think this, like, necessarily, like, upset people, like, oh my god, they're, trying to, say things
Well,
about,
there wasn't
police
Twitter then,
brutality.
but
That's true.
there probably would have
Yeah,
been people on Twitter. This is too
that's
woke.
true. Yeah, well, those people on Twitter, like, I don't, that's why I don't go on the social medias. I don't care what children on Twitter say.
That's good. That's good for your mental health.
Yeah, no, I do. I have to preserve that. There's only so much there. I need to keep it. But yeah, but I mean, I feel like it was a great way to make a really fun movie and also like drop some, social awareness in there too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a movie everyone can enjoy, and then we get the benefit of being able to, think about the issues later.
Yes,
You know,
totally agree.
so I think they did a good job with the delivery on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Other people might have a different experience with it, but
Yeah.
I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I heard that there was, and I saw like a piece of the scene of it. Apparently, they filmed an alternate ending.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's not the one they ended up having. So, like, the ending that they have is where they go, and so it's after like McClane and Zeus are like they go on the boat to try and stop Simon and everybody, and then they get overpowered and like tied to the explosive, and they're expected to blow up on the boat with all of the gold from the Federal Reserve, but they realize, oh, it's probably not, they're probably not actually going to blow up the gold. They're just going to pretend that they did, but and they like barely escape out of the boat at the last second. And so that was apparently supposed to be like, it almost ends there. They escape out of the boat and it's all, the boat is blown up, but like McClane thinks, well, I bet he didn't really blow up all the money. And then apparently the ending that didn't happen was, yes, Simon and his team of people escape with all of the gold,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like living his best life in Europe. And then McClane tracks him down to Hungary or something and finds him and is like, oh, okay, now we're gonna play a game of I say or McClane says, or like some silly play on like Simon says, and it's like some kind of like Russian roulette with a rocket launcher situation. And anyway, long story short, he kills him in this like ridiculous game, where he like finally gets his revenge or whatever. But for whatever reason, I think that's how they made the book version end, but they like didn't end up going with that ending for the film,
Seems a
even though
little
they
too
had filmed it.
sadistic, I think.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I
Like on
agree.
McClane's part, because he just doesn't come across
Mhm.
that way. Like he does his job and he catches the person, but him like
Yeah.
torturing the bad guy back seems weird.
Yeah, like I feel like that's a Mel Gibson thing because
Yeah.
he's creepy.
Yeah. But I like the idea of it ending on a boat because they've got to have like that same dire we're trapped in a small space situation like in the tower, and
Mhm.
so like the boat was a good way to do that, I think.
Yeah, and then like yeah, it's like they barely jump off the boat and it gets blown up, and then they like try to go find them later, like north of the border, but they're still basically like trying to transport all their gold on a boat, and then they shoot down the helicopter, and like that made more sense for this film.
Yeah,
So
but
I'm
him
glad
playing
they
like
made that
creepy
the
mind
ending.
games is weird,
Yeah,
just
that's weird. That's not a John McClane thing. He doesn't
yeah,
care. He's not going to chase you to Europe. He's just trying to do his job. He's a
right.
simple
I
guy.
don't think, yeah, that seems inappropriate. Like,
Yeah, like
like
why are you in? What are
he's
you
not in the
doing?
FBI. Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's or
Yeah,
CIA or
it's like
whatever. I'm
yeah,
sure
it's
that sounded really
creepy.
stupid. I'll probably edit that. Whoever
No,
does
no,
that,
it did. No, it didn't because like who is supposed to do that?
yeah,
Like
like legally, can
whose job
anyone
is
do
that?
that? Like, I'm.
No one's supposed to be doing that. Who gave you the authority? You're like a like barely reinstated officer in the NYPD, and now you're in Hungary. Like what?
Yeah, that makes him seem kind of unhinged if he's doing
Yeah,
that.
it does. Like, what are you doing, sir?
Yeah, that's not right.
This is not your
And then he
job.
like
Like,
plays a weird torture game and kills him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think audiences
yeah.
would like that.
No, I don't. I don't like that. Like, I can see Mel Gibson doing that because we know he's creepy now. Um,
Yeah.
we didn't know that at the time that we all enjoyed Lethal Weapon, but we do now.
I just
And
picture audiences watching that and then that happening and them going, huh.
huh?
Like
Yeah, like
that seems too far.
this,
Like it
this is
seems
weird.
weird.
Like
Seems
I don't,
dark.
I don't like
Yeah.
this.
But I didn't know that. That's really
Yeah,
interesting. But I get like the book
yeah.
has more license to like be a little more extreme too, and like so that kind
Hmm.
of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and they did film that scene. Like I found it on YouTube or whatever, but I don't like it. It's weird. He's wearing like the weird scarf situation. Like this is not for this movie.
It's like the ending of a different movie. Like, it's kind of weird.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It didn't work. The ending that they had was great. And then,
Yeah.
okay, I do want to talk about though. You know how at the very end they're finally like, oh, okay, like call Holly back, and like at the very, very end of the movie that he's getting on the payphone to call her because he accidentally left her on hold, like right before they, went and did that last scene. But
Yeah.
what is the deal with like every single person in this movie trying to like force him to get his marriage back together? Like, maybe they live in opposite sides of the country
It
and
never
they
seemed
don't
to
get
work out in
along.
the first place.
Right, like isn't it just okay that they don't live together? Like, can we not just be okay with the fact that they were married at one point in time? They haven't been together in any of these movies that we've seen over the last, like, 8 years. Like, can we just let it be the case that they're not together and they don't like each other?
What,
Like,
chronologically, which is this? Because there's Die Hard, Die Harder, and then Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? It's the third movie?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the third one.
Okay.
So it takes place several years after the first one.
Right. No,
So,
I
and
agree. I feel like this is like a older movie, older idea
Mhm.
thing of like trying to get two people together. But even in the first movie, they had problems. So I don't know.
Right. It's like maybe it's just that, they made a good couple at one point in time and then their lives went in a different direction and for whatever host of reasons, like they're not good together anymore. Why is every single person in this movie trying to like constantly make him call his ex-wife and try to get back together? Like,
I don't know. Maybe that's also could just be them repeating a beat. Like, to make,
yeah.
oh, remember McLean? He's the guy that him and his wife don't get along, and so
Yeah.
we got to keep going. Go back to your wife. It's
Yeah,
like,
like why can't they just be like responsible co-parents who have an arrangement?
I know he doesn't seem like the best partner from what we're getting from
Right.
this movie. That he drinks too much, he's losing his job. But I guess it's supposed to be a redemption story, so that I guess the ending of
Yeah.
that would be because, like, they even say at one point in the movie, like, "How are the kids doing?" And he's like, "I hear they're doing fine." It's like, oh,
Mhm.
yikes.
Mhm. Yeah, like you haven't seen your kids in, however long. Like that's problematic. Like certainly that's problematic.
Yeah, yeah, that's not going
But
to be conducive to a good marriage, I don't think.
no. But like they've been separated for like 7 or 8 years by this point. Like can y'all not just accept that they're not together anymore?
Yeah, I don't know.
Their kids are like 19 by now. Like what?
Yeah, like you don't have to stay together for the kids anymore. They're not interested. Um,
Right.
yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that, but I agree. And doesn't he have like a weird romantic scene with one of the other women? Or
Oh. Like I
or
don't know. It
that
feels like
scene where
he's like kind of flirtatious
what's up with
sometimes.
that one I guess is that with his wife at the end where there's someone in a bra and he's like with them.
Well,
What was happening
well,
there?
well. There's that one scene where like Simon is like hooking up with
Oh,
the
Simon was.
like
Okay.
yeah with the, well. Are you thinking of like that blonde haired lady who
Oh,
doesn't ever
yeah. Well, there's
speak?
also a
Yeah.
blonde-haired lady in their group, so I think I got confused.
Oh well, there is, and like there is like a weird kind of like flirtation thing that keeps happening between them,
Which is
where
a
she's like,
weird thing of like if we work with a woman, it's impossible that someone's not dating her, which is not true, but
right, which is that's not how people work. Like it is possible that she's coming to work and is not interested in your penis. Like
yeah.
that is very possible, and I would say likely.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, because there's that scene too where like he she sees him naked in that van or whatever.
Yeah, he's trying to like put on the sign thing and
Yeah.
everything. Has to like take
And
off his
then
pants
she's
and
like,
stuff.
I'm not impressed. And he's like, my
Yeah.
wife had the same reaction. Again, maybe that's a sign. Like,
Yes. Yeah. It's like, what's this? We don't need this from you, sir.
yeah, no one's interested.
No one wants this. Like, just please stop.
Okay, well, I got confused at the end. Sorry. It is the one and only time
Yeah.
I've seen it, so I need to see it
No,
again,
no, that's
clearly.
okay. Well, but no, he does have those flirtatious moments with her.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there's like that last like sex scene, like right before they show up in the helicopter, and it's like Simon and that the lady that's like one of the other German assassins that
Yeah.
like apparently they're a couple. But it also bothers me that she's mute. Like, why?
Why? They're like, there's two women in this movie, and one of them is mute.
Mm-hmm.
Why is
Yeah,
that?
like, why is that?
Yeah, interesting.
I have trouble with that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because she's
Oh,
like,
man.
in theory, a cool character, but like, why is it that she's not allowed to speak?
Literally can't speak.
Literally can't speak.
I did not think of that, but I do now.
It's problematic.
That's
for
an
me.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is like a metaphor for a lot of 90s bullshit that is problematic.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't like it because I really liked her. Like, I
it was like,
remember
oh, that's
thinking,
progressive.
she's
They
cool.
have like, you know, a baddie that's a woman. That's good. And then
Yeah,
when you find out she's
I like
mute, you're
that.
like,
Why
interesting
though?
choice there.
Yes. You're like, why did you go out of your way? Like, that is a kind of unusual thing.
Yeah, and same with the woman on the good guy team. You're like, oh, they have a woman. Oh, they sexually harass her. Never mind.
Yes.
It's like,
yeah. Why are
oh,
these
dear.
the only women that are in this movie? I don't like this portrayal here.
Yeah, you can see why in modern TV and movies, like, we've moved away from this. Although I still like it, this movie in general.
Yeah, I still like it in general, and I like where it was going in a lot of directions. Like, it lets us know, it reminds us of, you know, this was in 1995.
Yeah, there was some growth to be had.
There's some growth to be had, and I'm not sure that we've, you know, completed it yet. I'm sure that we haven't, actually.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that we have not.
Oh, another point I wanted to bring up that I told you, that I texted you while watching this movie, is how incredibly short this film would be if they had cell phones.
Oh my
Even
God.
the riddles, you would just Google them. Like,
yes! Like, how do you fill a 5-gallon and 3-gallon jar with 4 gallons of water? Like, you just, who's the 21st president? Like,
oh yeah,
you don't have to ask
42nd,
people that.
Second, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so what's 21 out of 42? And, like, did you notice, like, the interesting reference? Okay, this kind of blew my mind watching it again recently, but there are references to, like, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump throughout this movie.
Yes.
Like, that freaked me out in an unpleasant way.
How about the woman that was like, I'm gonna marry Donald Trump? I was like, yikes.
Yikes, no ma'am. No ma'am. Like, did he pay, like, 20th Century Fox to, or whatever it is, to say that? Like, it almost makes me think that he probably paid them to, like, put that line in. Like, I don't even know. But then also when they're talking about, like, oh, who the fuck just cut me off? Oh, maybe it's Hillary Clinton. No, she would have been the 43rd, not the 42nd. Like, why is in 1995 even Hillary Clinton is a trope for, like, women getting out of their lane?
Yeah, it was a very big reason. And I think, too, like, in the 90s, like, Trump was kind of like a prominent rich figure. I mean, he's mentioned in a lot of movies, actually.
He is. He's in Home Alone 2, and, like, I found out that he apparently insisted on having that cameo in order for them to be allowed to film in, like, one of his buildings or something.
He was always very interested in being in public, so...
Mm-hmm. Oh, someone who is, you know, prominent and appears to have money. Let's, you know, talk about them like they're a big deal. Like, this is very 90s.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
Just, you know, we're obsessed with the.
It feels weird now, like,
mm-hmm.
even though I do feel like nowadays we mention rich people like Elon Musk or Bezos. I don't think no one's gonna get in a movie and go, oh, Elon, marry me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like people would be like, that's weird. Like, what? Yeah, but back then, I feel like people were like, you know, I don't know. It was a little different.
Yeah, I think it was too. So that just, you know, points that out. And just when they point this stuff out about, you know, that, and then also when they're like, oh, we got cut off in traffic. Oh, who do you think you are, Hillary Clinton? Like,
you're like, yikes, ouch, what's going on?
What is the deal that you're just, like, mad that a female person who has their own life is connected to a powerful man? Like,
yeah, like, what?
What is...
I don't know, very weird.
What is the anxiety here that we're talking about?
Yeah, I guess that was just really different, at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and it
Wow,
was
I
just,
didn't even I didn't even notice that. I have to watch it again.
yeah, no, it's that one part when they're talking about, like, "Oh, what's 21 out of 42?" And that's when they figure out that they're talking about presidents, because they're, like, mulling over in their head. He said, "What's 21 out of 42? What's he talking about?" It's like another riddle, and then they're, like, in the dump truck that they stole from the aqueduct guy, and they're, like,
Mhm.
driving in traffic, and someone cuts them off, and they're like, "Oh, who do you think you are, Hillary Clinton?" Or something. He's like, no, 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 she wouldn't be the 42nd, she'd be the 43rd president. And then that's when they, like, realize, oh, it's the riddle they gave us was about the presidents, or I don't know, something like that. I may be getting it kind of mixed up, but, like, just the fact that, a pushy woman is, the joke in this scene, and that you're then connecting this person to, oh, you must be Hillary Clinton, who we
I
assume
wonder
must
if
be pushy.
it's
Like,
probably because, it's a movie that's gonna have current jokes, and that was, like, a current joke at the time.
yeah,
So,
which,
like, I'm sure it says a lot about that time. Were there any other scenes that we missed or, like, that we haven't brought up yet?
ooh, let's think here. Like, good scenes in this movie. Like, I really enjoy this whole movie. I feel like it's very fast paced and fun.
Yeah. I
Okay,
like the train was a good scene too with the bomb on the
yes,
train
yes,
or
I
I
love that.
near the train. Yeah.
Yeah, where he's, like, trying to get the bomb off of the train, and he's, like, running through there, and they had to split up, and, like, that was another good scene too, where, like, so, like, McClane is on the train trying to find the bomb to, like, get it off, and then at
Mhm.
the same time, like, Zeus is going through the station to try and get to the phone in time to answer the phone, so they're trying to, like, hedge their bets, but they both kind
Yeah.
of don't quite get there. Oh, Snow is attacking something over here, sorry. um they don't quite get there, but I love that scene where he's trying to go through the train, and, like, the lady's like, "Ah, why are you looking under my dress?" And it's like, he's like, "I'm just trying to get the thing off the train." But then also we have that moment where, like, Zeus is in the station and he had to hop over the turnstile. Like, he didn't buy a ticket. He ran into the station without buying a ticket to, like, try and
Mhm.
hurry and get to the phone booth in time to answer the phone. And he had to, like, yell at that man to get off the phone. And then the cop is, like, trying to shoot him now because he ran through the
Yeah.
turnstile. Like, he
Mhm.
didn't pay 67 cents to get into the building, and now we have to, like, point a gun at this person.
Yeah,
Like,
that's extreme. Like, that's not necessary to
you
escalate
don't,
that situation to
yes,
violence.
you don't need to shoot somebody over they didn't buy a ticket to come in here and they're trying to get on the telephone. Like, that's not a shoot somebody kind of offense. But,
Right.
like, the whole scene kind of turns on that. The guy's, like, gonna shoot him. He's standing there with a
Yeah.
gun and he's like, "Well, if you have to shoot me, just shoot me. I'm gonna answer the phone." Like, why do you have to have that conversation with someone? Like,
Yeah, that's
what?
absurd.
That is outrageous. And yeah, and I feel like that was, a very interesting juxtaposition that they put there, where, like, he's having this experience where he's trying to answer a phone and might get shot. Meanwhile, like, McClane is in the train, like, rummaging through everything, tearing stuff off the walls and, like, kicking down doors and stuff, and people are
And no
just
one
getting out of his
questions it. Yeah.
way. Yeah, like, it was
And
a
he's disheveled and bloody also
right. He looks
the whole movie.
crazy.
And
And
everyone's like, "Oh, that's fine."
this is
Like
fine, but they're, like, always trying to shoot Zeus. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yikes.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I love that like they make these little points throughout the film that, like, I'll admit, in 1997 or whatever, when I saw this, like, that went straight over my head.
Oh,
But
for sure.
yeah,
Me too in a lot of movies.
yeah, but, like, also we were kids, like,
Mhm.
you know. But it was just an interesting point that they made there. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're
I thought that
right.
was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. And I want to give credit to, like, Samuel L. Jackson for that. I feel like he brought, like, every bit of that character to life,
Yes.
and, like, I think that was him. I don't even know how much of that was scripted. I mean, obviously, large parts of this movie were scripted, of course, but
There was even a part where uh Bruce Willis hands him that gun and he's like, "How do I shoot it?" And he's like, "You don't know how to shoot it?" And he's like,
mhm.
What? Why would
Yeah,
I automatically know how to shoot a gun?" And he's
Right,
like,
why don't you just
"Oh, and so he helps him shoot it. I'm like, that's a good point, and also something you never see in movies,
Mhm.
is showing someone how to use it because so I feel like it was intentional to make a point,
Yes.
but also a good point in general is that people don't automatically know how to shoot guns. So just saying.
Yes. Yes, and then, like, I love how, like, he's actually not able to use it later, like, the safety is
Yeah,
on or something, and, like, Simon takes it away from him and is like, "Oh, the safety was on." Like, he didn't know how to shoot a gun because he's not a person that's handled a gun before. Like, why did you
yeah,
assume that about him, that he handled a lot of guns? Also, gun safety is important, and it's not just don't take for granted that someone knows what they're doing with a firearm. They don't. D Only use that if you've practiced it often and regularly and know what you're doing. Don't handle guns otherwise.
good tip.
Yeah. Pro
Helpful
tip.
tip.
Pro tip. Don't handle guns that you don't know how to use. Don't
Yeah,
do that. It will not end well.
right.
Yeah. But that was good. I also like those scenes when they're on the boat at the end.
Hmm.
When they like jump onto the boat and they're like trying to, sort of do that last scene where they want. I don't actually know what they thought they were going to accomplish if they jumped onto the boat off of the bridge. Like, I mean, what are you going to do? Take over the boat? I guess that was their plan.
I
But
guess.
I kind of like that didn't work out because, like, that's silly.
I know. And at the end, they were like, "This didn't work," and he's like, "Yeah, but I mean, we're alive," and I'm like, "That's true."
Yeah, like
They-
that was probably the best outcome.
yeah.
That was great. Uh, But it was a good scene too, though, because we're like you kind of like it humanizes Simon a little bit, where they
Yes.
get up to the bridge and he's like, "Oh no, I was trying to call the Coast Guard," and like, but they put me on hold, and like everyone's just kind of laughing about that for a minute. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like okay, that's kind of funny. Yeah, you were trying to like call in an emergency and they put you on hold. Now I'm gonna shoot you.
Yeah.
But it was great. I liked that scene where like they're just like okay they're at the end of the rope and rather than this being because okay I might be making this up, it's been a long time since I've seen the original Lethal Weapon movie, but isn't it in like one of the first like one or two Lethal Weapon movies where they do something like that where they like go on the boat and like somehow take it over and shoot everybody and like get control of the boat or something.
I'm not sure. Man, it's been so long since I've seen
Yeah.
those.
It's been a long time, but I feel like that happened in one of the earlier Lethal Weapon movies. So this,
So that's another callback, probably.
yeah, I feel like that's a callback. But then, like this time, like it didn't work at all because, like, that's silly. How would you do that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that was kind of funny. I like how that just didn't work out.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, okay, this didn't work out. Mm. It was great. And that's what I like about these like 90s action films where they just don't take themselves too
Yeah,
seriously.
they know what they are, and it's like you're just having fun. Like when I was
Yeah.
watching it, I said, "Man, this is really entertaining." Like I'm having
Yeah.
fun, you
Yeah.
know.
It's a silly, fun, entertaining movie, and like there's a few, they throw in some, zingers here and there and some thought questions for later, but like it's a fun, entertaining movie, and it's not trying to pretend like we're, solving world problems by just, watching this silly movie.
Yeah. No, I
And
agree. I liked it for that reason too.
yeah, I do too. I
It
feel like
was
the
like, oh, and I love watching really serious films too, but sometimes
oh
I'm
yeah.
like, it's kind of nice to just relax and just enjoy a film and just have fun.
Yes, I feel like that's what action films were in the 80s and 90s. They're just like we're going to relax and have a good time.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, then I guess that brings me probably to my last couple of questions then.
yeah, go for it.
What if you had to summarize, why do you think you've seen this film so many times? Why do you like it so
Mm.
much?
Okay, so it's first of all because I like the Die Hard franchise so much. So,
Yes.
like, if you like original Die Hard, you'll like Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yeah.
So that's the main reason. But also, yeah, it's just one of those really fun '90s action films that you can watch and have a good time with and enjoy. And it's just a fun movie. And also, it has really good like zingers and back and forth and banter between the main characters, which I love that about movies. Like the fun dialogue is the best part for me. So this is great for that if you want to see people kind of like excoriating each other in a friendly way.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a good answer. Well, how would you pitch this movie to someone that hasn't seen this one before?
Ooh, okay. So first of all, I would say, have you seen Die Hard? And
Yeah, that's important to have seen first, probably.
yes, see that first. If you haven't seen that first, go to that first and see that. And then after that, come see this movie. But if you have already seen Die Hard, then I don't know why you haven't seen this already. You need to go do that right
sorry.
now. Yeah,
We fixed it today, so that's
I'm
good.
glad we fixed it today. Like, I don't know how I didn't accidentally make you watch this movie sooner.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I haven't seen it.
Either.
That's why I think maybe I did and I don't remember. I don't know. Anyway.
It could be that. Yeah. It could be like that time we watched that Indiana Jones that doesn't exist, and I forgot we had seen it in theaters until we watched it again.
Well, we blocked that one for different reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, that's for a different reason. This one's actually good. Like, this one you can watch, and you will enjoy this movie if you watch it. Like, I guarantee it.
Yes. Well, Kara, thank you so much for coming on. We definitely have to pick another movie to discuss in the future.
Yes. Like, I have so many ideas now. I'm not sure if it's going to be Lethal Weapon or not, but it's going to be either Lethal Weapon or I'm just pulling this out of the air, but The Village.
Okay, awesome. Excited for that then.
Yeah, a little preview there. Like, I kind of want to do that one, actually.
Let's do it. Let's do it. That sounds fun.
Let's do that one. I know that might be an unpopular one, but
I don't think so.
Okay, good, because I love that movie.
Really like that film. Yeah.
Okay, I'm throwing that out there now. That should be the next one we do, and it doesn't have Mel Gibson in it, so.
That's true. All right, well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, let's do it.